I was born ready.
I was so glad that it didn't. I was like running and jumping and doing stupid shit too, so it's a good thing I didn't do. Good thing I did pop the calf doing just a little bit, or else I'd have had a total meltdown. But
at least he was doing real shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just got lucky on all the extreme stuff, and then I was just dribbling the ball and went, fuck.
It was just at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, we're back. Sunny day here in Amsterdam, finally.
Socks on.
Socks on. Hashtag socks on. I got moderate holes in these.
Yeah, but that should be okay. I don't
Here's
think
the deal. My mom, I was sent a message that my mother was sending me a care package, and I assumed that socks were a part of that, as the joke was.
Yeah.
And this was, I think, maybe hinted at as a possibility like 2 months ago. What I realized was that was more of a joke, and that now I was waiting on socks that were never coming. Until last week. Hey, I sent you a care package. Now, of course, I never clarified whether socks were coming or not. Yeah. And I don't know what international package mail is like.
Probably slow right now.
So,
but
so the sock train is still going to wait, because I'll be goddamned if I'm buying socks if there's ones on the way.
I'm the same way. I think I'm running out. Like tomorrow, I need to break the bank.
I have like it's like a wardrobe issue where I hate the idea of going to shop. I'll buy like one shirt every 2 months just because I'll see one I like. It's always t-shirts, you know. And I'll maintain like the same pairs of pants while they just gradually fall apart until there's slowly. It's just kind of, I never will prioritize shopping because it's so inconvenient. Like for me to go in, I could buy a t-shirt at a place, maybe,
and be happy,
and I could get maybe athletic shorts, but nothing.
At Lululemon.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be able to get like regular pants because I'm just a little bit too tall. It's the fucking worst. So
I need socks. I need to remind myself to buy socks.
So fortunately, I don't have any sort of like. Can you imagine having a job in which you had to have like quite a rotation of dress clothes, to where you had to like have a
no, because I never had one.
Insane.
Well, maybe one, but I was like 19. That was a while ago. I haven't had a job like that in a long time.
Yeah. I catch myself like putting on real clothes to go to the coffee place just so I feel like a human being.
Wait, I had a jacket when I was a bouncer. Right. 26 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 20 years ago. I think it's the last time I had to put clothes on command.
Yeah. I think if I put on anything that's not sweatpants or shorts, like it's only for its own sake. It's like, well, I should feel like I contribute.
Yeah, it's because we're going out. Let's go to Richard's place. Or
but
exactly.
So we had a real good seminar weekend.
That was good.
Coaches Week's brewing now.
I was exhausted. Like I hadn't done a seminar
been a couple
since
months.
More than that. February.
February. Yeah.
4 months. I felt it too. I was super tired by the end of it. Yeah. It was good though.
Well, it was cool because we had, in that gap, in the time between those seminars, is when you've been working on all the lactate stuff, among many other things. Yeah. Really.
Yeah, the neuroscience and the lactate has been the two main things.
Yeah. So it was a just as comprehensive but wildly different approach to the seminars that I'd seen in a while. So it's cool.
Right.
It's really cool.
Yeah. In a way, I want to simplify it, which no, it never works. But the seminars kind of follow where I'm at as well, because it has to be fun for me too. And so we didn't have that many questions, so I kind of follow the path that I had figured out would be, in a way, simplifying toward the stuff toward movement, and still nutrition is a big part of it, because I think the protocol is not nutrition now. It's behavior. It's how to feel better.
Yeah.
Right. And that's I guess we do it differently than most, because nutrition from the fitness industry is losing weight or getting a six pack or getting muscle. Right. And I see it completely differently.
Yeah.
I see it as the only way to make the system work.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't given you this review, but I was talking to somebody after the seminar and said that they'd gone to quite a few of these types, just quite a few different seminars, fitness, training, all sorts of stuff, and said, just kind of trying to figure out what I can take away from each thing. But they said this one was like one of the, covered the most ground for them on everything. And we had kind of got to talking, and I think a lot of it was because, not just, and this is what you've always done, but compared to a lot of other things out there, you zoom out a lot further. It's a much more inclusive view. And it seems like a lot of other, not to talk any shit, but a lot of if you're teaching movements, you're teaching training principles or programming, what people go into is they go in with a fucking magnifying lens and they zoom in way too close.
And honestly, I am convinced it's because they got touched by money.
Yeah.
It was Brett Weinstein who was saying that he was criticizing like science a lot. I think it was the last Joe Rogan podcast. He was doing good on that one. And we have the same view of the problem with science today is the greasy fingers left marks on it. And I think in the fitness industry, honestly, I see people putting themselves into corners, you know, by announcing something shiny so they can be their thing and they can sell that. And when the thing crumbles, come forward and act like it never happened in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's the same issue I see in science, by the way. Where people mostly follow one fad and everybody goes into this and then goes into the next one. And so zooming out and looking at the Voltron effect, at the human as a system, to me is the only way to help people. Because otherwise it's what to do versus how. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, one of the things they said, there was nothing that was covered in any of the other things that they'd gone to about like emotion or the state or anxiety.
Is that the English dude?
I think so, yeah.
You know that he's a world champion ninja warrior?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah, I discovered because he was mentioning, it was funny, he was mentioning the StrongFit seminar, but before coming, and he was referring to us, like, they say, what is a podcast you're listening to? He said, StrongFit. It's like, strongman is very important. I was like, really? Strongman, eh? That's what the podcast is. I don't think, did we ever talk about strongman on the podcast?
I mean, maybe.
We referred it
maybe
here and there, but I thought that was funny. And so, so he's a very wide lens guy. So he was, then he's a free runner. So, and then, free runner, then into Ninja Warrior. And from there, he won everything. Drank his own piss. He keeps talking about it. He keep talking about it, but did like some long water fasting.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Tim. What's up, Tim?
Yes, that is
Tim. Yeah, that was Tim. Yeah. So he's done. He knows Paul Chek.
Okay.
Like he talked to Paul Chek like directly because he seems like at some point I thought it was very interesting. He went vegan to try, did not like it, thought it was very harmful, and went out there. And as a free runner, like Ninja Warrior guy, got on TV shows and said this is harmful to you, and he got torched to the ground by the vegan community, as you can imagine.
For only reflecting one's own experience.
Exactly. That sounds about right.
What a fucking
How
horrible,
dare you?
What a horrible
How
thing.
dare you, Tim? Talk about your own experience. How dare you? And so that was
But I thought with this seminar it was really cool, and the way we had talked from last episode, framed through the movement box, was I thought a really novel way to approach it, because when people do come in from kind of a CrossFit space, the lens they're looking at things is kind of programming, movements, and here and there. So you kind of, with that, you take them into that, and then you blow it all fucking out. So it was really cool. But we got into a lot of the lactate stuff in really good context, though. Then.
Right. Because okay. So that's sometimes something I don't do enough of is bring the context. It happens. You can tell me it happens. No, I know it happens. And I was like, and I thought like explaining lactate in the context of nutrition, in the context of exercise, of muscle fibers, would be within context, but big enough that people understand that everything is connected.
Yeah.
That's my problem with the microscope, is it disconnects everything, functional segregation, we talk about all the time. So I think a lot of that's how I'm going to do the seminar more and more, is as a global view on people. Like movement is not separate from how you feel, from emotions, from your nutrition, from your energy system. It is the same thing at the end.
Yeah, it's almost difficult even when going through that process of explaining it, to keep them separate. It's really hard not to go from one to the other. But I thought it went really well. We want to get into today, though, another expansion on the lactate stuff. Right,
exactly. So it occurred to me the other day. I was studying some stuff, and I was like, wait. Like, why is this? So we talk about functional integration. I think functional integration hits nowhere else harder than in biology. It's why? I think it's cultural reasons. Honestly, again, like the stuff with God and all, I do think it's cultural reasons. And the fitness industry. Those two go together, I think. But then I was studying a lot of the lactate, glycolysis, all that stuff. And then I was thinking about the protocol. And I remember one time some moron on YouTube who was bitching, talking about gluconeogenesis as turning protein into glucose. It's not protein, it's the breakdown. You turn certain amino acids into glucose, alanine and the specific ones. So you get breakdown of protein, allow you to add the amino acids, and then as a recycling, you get those into glucose. Anyway, but the guy could not have, he reminded me how much people look at gluconeogenesis as like that thing over there that does that, but that is not part of the main conversation. And so I started to study a little bit deeper because there's a few things that was striking me. And then I'm going to explain why I found what I think. Right, so going back to, this has been the last few things, glycolysis, it's glucose into lactate. Yeah. It's not pyruvate, it's lactate. Yes, I said it again, right. But if it seems that there is, so if I look at gluconeogenesis, one of the main substrate energy block of matter in order is to take lactate back into glucose. So what you have is a circle. So it means glucose to lactate, lactate to glucose. Right, so, and I'm looking, so you have other substrate to get to glucose. You also have glycerol, I'm going to explain, alanine, a bunch of amino acids and things like this that go toward that. But then suddenly it hit me. If lactate is not a waste product, if it's a fuel and it's the main it's the end product of glycolysis, then taking lactate back into glucose, that means you have a cycle.
Yeah.
Right. This is not explained as a cycle. The steps to take from lactate to glucose are almost the same as glucose to lactate. It's like reversing the steps. A few differences, but it's basically you have 10 steps this way, 11 steps that way, and outside of a few differences, they are basically the same thing. So that means it's a cycle. Right. You have, this would be so big in itself.
Yeah.
Like you hear about the Hebb cycle, the Cori cycle, the stuff, because but that is not considered a cycle. Why? Because lactate is a waste product, or at least the end product is pyruvate.
That fundamental misunderstanding.
Right. And so, but the glycolysis, so we should call it the Brooks cycle, really, because Brooks is the one who made, the lactate shuttle theory and stuff, or the Pinot cycle, because I'm the first one to talk about it.
I was really hoping to put my name on this one, but we'll wait till somebody gets something cooler.
The Stone cycle sounds better than the Pinot
awesome,
cycle.
But the problem is that I should probably put it on something I understand better, like.
But still, the Stone cycle sounds. I gotta say, it sounds pretty. It
like
sounds
stuffed
pretty dope.
crust pizza or some sort.
It's actually let me explain how it applies to stuffed crust pizza. And so what you would have there is the main energy pathway to produce lactate, which is a miracle thing for the body, and a recycling of all that going back toward glucose, so we can start the cycle over. So you would have the most important energy pathway cycle in the body. That would be enormous, and yet it is not seen as that as well. Gluconeogenesis is the stuff that happens when you fast a lot. Well, so let me avenge the name of gluconeogenesis here.
Somebody had to.
Somebody has.
I was out
this
in the
has
world.
to end.
I just thought nobody was going to step.
We're going to call it the Avenger cycle. Because someone has to avenge the name of gluconeogenesis. So what is gluconeogenesis? First of all, let me explain again. So you take lactate. So lactate in the body, pyruvate, alanine, glycerol, and then you turn it into glucose. This is, gluconeogenesis can be enhanced by fasting. Like after 12 hours, it starts to go up to humongous levels after 40 hours, right? But that was seen as basically something, like it's triggered, for example, if your the blood sugar is low. So just to get the glucose back on.
Okay. And is it about glucose specifically, or is it a combination involving energy usage? So like you said, this when blood sugar was low, this comes back on. It seems like that is a high efficiency operation.
Exactly. So the thing is, when glycolysis is on, gluconeogenesis has to be off. When gluconeogenesis is on, glycolysis has to be off, because they are basically the same pathway but opposite, like a cycle. Like that sounds so obvious now, looking at it like that, right? How are they not seeing this? So it's going to make a humongous difference on a number of stuff. So to explain how big this is, let me explain to you listeners, the energy pathways. Well, you have three main ones. You have, it has to do with time scale. The short time scale, few seconds, is creatine phosphate. You don't have the time to produce lactate, so it's energy right away. You know, it's like the 7 seconds for sprinter, stuff like that. Yeah. It's just ATP production through creatine phosphate. The phosphate is loose, turns into ATP right away. Right, that's a few seconds. Then the main energy producing is glycolysis. I get glucose coming in, so a form of carbohydrate coming in, and then I produce lactate. Lactate becomes the fuel for the heart, for the muscles, for the brain, for basically everything. So the brain has 2 ways of getting lactate, from the body or from the cells called the astrocytes. Interestingly, the astrocytes can store glycogen, but also have a gluconeogenesis cycle of their own.
Okay.
So they get to recycle like the whole stuff, which makes sense since they also, there's what is called a cerebral glycolysis. So all the stuff starts to, come together.
So it's going to match in each area. Okay.
And then after the lactate production, at some point you also something that is called lipolysis. So lipolysis is breaking down the fat cells, right, into fatty acids directly for energy, and glycerol. Glycerol will be a substrate of gluconeogenesis. Okay. So now you start, you see how this thing starts to position itself, right? So what is lipolysis for? Is to give you like that diesel stuff where you can run for, like they were calculating it technically, without breakdown, you could run forever at a slow pace just by breaking down fat cells, right? It's a diesel, but it is a source of energy, right? What is interesting about that is that happens using type 1 muscle fibers. The type 1, which is a slow oxidative fibers, like running slow, steady cardio. Those fibers are net consumers of lactate.
Primarily what they do is just
consume lactate, right? So imagine if you were stuck with just having the lactate as fuel, then the type 1 would start absorbing. At some point, if you ran so much, you would run out of glucose and start to endanger the amount of lactate the brain can get. And self-defense mechanism, I think that's what lipolysis is. We're going to use the fat cells for a specific type of effort to fuel the effort so that we don't have to rely on lactate too much, because then the brain is not affected too much.
And that's a secondary or third down the line as far as when it comes to urgency.
Oh, yeah, right? So it's the last one.
Yeah, so we talk about prioritizing your immediate needs for the sake of fucking evolution, survival,
exactly. When we know
all of that stuff.
Like, when the rate of lactate is high, lipolysis stops.
Yeah.
So they say lactate inhibits, actually talked about this in a podcast, lactate inhibits lipolysis. And I say I was wrong about that. I might be right, I'm not sure. Like from when I read, I'm right. When I originally said that lactate inhibits lipolysis, yeah, maybe. That's what I'm reading, but I have a feeling it's not quite that simple. Anyway, but so whenever the rates of lactate are high, lipolysis doesn't work. So it's really the stuff in the bag so that you can just keep on moving, but at a slow pace.
Yeah.
And then, so you have creatine phosphate as fuel, you have lactate as fuel, and then you have the fat cells, right? Technically the fatty acids. So through lipolysis, you break down the fat cells, the fat to get to that, right? Well, out of those 3, only 1 is a fuel for the brain, the lactate, right? So that becomes very important. That's one of the things that tells me that what our body wants is the glycolysis, is that stone cycle, because that's the most important one.
Don't make that a thing. I want to save it for something better.
Okay.
Do not make that a thing.
Let's do the Brooks cycle, because the guy it should be his name. So let's go the Brooks cycle. Is toward lactate, right? But if you look at lipolysis, how it works, you could game the system, which means you could have very little fat in your diet and do steady cardio just to break down the fat cells. Then naturally, your fat levels, your body fat percentage would drop down and down and down and down. That would be simple, right? On the other side, it's not a good energy source, not what we want. So we still need the lactate to come in. So what could I do? I could just up the carbs. I would up the carbs on one side, lower the fat, do steady cardio. So I would keep the energy levels high by having glucose and all that stuff, and keep dropping my body fat percentage with steady cardio over time. And that's the bodybuilding diet.
And that's with limiting dietary fat also, kind of.
Yes, right? You would have to do that, because otherwise you will just get...
And I think you see with a lot of bodybuilding diets, when they do include fat, it's very specifically to maintain
just enough
basic functions. Like they'll add some oils and some here that, because if you don't have enough fat, your overall hormone profile will go to shit. So, but that's very interesting, and because when you see a bodybuilding diet, it is very much often lean meat, very lean meat, lean fish, even lean red meat. It's all the meat's kind of as lean as can be. And even when I was eating them, that's what I prioritized. I didn't lean towards very high fat meat because I just would shift towards carbs and then just protein. I viewed high fat meat just a pile of calories that wasn't protein for me then. That was the way I justified it then.
Yeah, but you could see how you could trick the system. By the way, that would work only for a small time for many reasons.
It works until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't, right? And we're going to explain. Right. So that means that I keep feeding myself carbs. That means I keep pumping glucose. I keep turning the glycolysis on, right, to produce energy continuously. And the calories on the other side, whatever is turned into fat, I'm going to break down with steady cardio, which is what you see. So that would be the way to basically drop the body fat. So what's the issue with that, and why do I say not to do it? Well, so remember, you can have glycolysis and gluconeogenesis at the same time. So that means that if you keep pumping glucose, right, some of it will be turning glycogen, but that means that you are asking the system to continuously produce energy. That's what they tell you, carbs is energy, because that's how they feel, they keep pumping that. So that means that the gluconeogenesis is constantly turned off. Not constantly, but it's mostly turned off. It's turned on by things like lower blood sugar, fasting, or things like that. Since you eat every 3 hours and your blood sugar is never low, what you're trying to do is constantly produce energy. Right, so that means that if you look at it, you have turned the recycling system off.
Yeah. And I think that's where we start running into what I describe as an efficiency problem when we talk about carbs.
Right, so evolution has given us the main energy pathway as a cycle. Right, what happens when you turn recycling off? We know that from Earth. Well, the shit starts to accumulate.
And you're also going to get, fundamentally, this is kind of a thermodynamics thing, but you're going to get a higher, we use octane, you're going to get a higher output of energy when you are using a singular A to B structure. Burn, fuel, excess out. The problem is it is inefficient. The excess, there's a very simple explanation, is if you have a old furnace that's inefficient, right? 60%, this old fucking thing. What that has, a big canister in it, this is oversimplification, that just gets hot and you blow fucking air over it and it blows into your house, right? That's kind of it. And whatever comes out of that air, you're going to get some hot ass air into your house, but then there's a shit ton of heat going out that chimney. A lot.
Right.
You get to the higher efficient stuff nowadays, it has that same amount, just a big hunk of metal that blows combusted fuel through. But then it goes through really small tubes. It gets recycled again. Instead of going out there and getting spit out the top, that air goes run through a finer distribution, run through again. And then what happens is all of the energy is going into the system, and you are very much limiting what goes out, and to the tune of cutting your waste out the top end probably by 40 or 50% to what's going out the top. And that's just simply that's a fundamental kind of thermodynamic principle of recycling anything involving fuel. Of any really energy source that you can construct.
And from the position, so the recycle, imagine if, by the way, you don't do the recycling, that means you're left with, it's not dirt in that case, but you're left with stuff that are supposed to be recycled. In this particular case, you have, for example, I talked about the glycerol during lipolysis, right? You break down the fat into glycerol on one side and fatty acids on the other. Glycerol is supposed to go to gluconeogenesis to be turned into glucose. But if you stop it all the time, that means the glycerol never gets to make it to glucose. That means there's, I have no idea if that's not safe for the body, but my guess is it would be. Anything that is not being recycled is probably not good for the body. So all the glycerol just has to accumulate somewhere. And then, for example, lactate, whatever that you don't use. So we talked about lactate in the blood. Right, my guess is this has to be flushed toward, there's gluconeogenesis in the brain, gluconeogenesis in the liver, there's different places. But gluconeogenesis has to take care of the lactate that is not being used. So that brought a new idea forward on this as well. During the seminar, Wim was there and we tested the lactate in the blood. And so I test myself, I'm at 1, which is, fairly standard on the low side, right? And then suddenly I have a fight with Yaya because she's fucking 15. And so she's, as usual, her. Like that half the time part, and I'm getting pissed, and I'm like, okay, just go away. And I'm curious, and I'm like, please, do it again. And then suddenly I'm at 3.
Yeah.
I triple my levels of lactate in the blood out of one fight of 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
One 30-second fight with Yaya, just getting pissed.
It was probably 2 minutes between tests.
Right. There's literally less than 2 minutes between tests. It's
No
just
movement.
me getting no movement, just me getting pissed.
Yeah.
And my lactate went from 1 to 3. We have seen from prior testing that athletes that are anxious have a lower rate of lactate in their blood than athletes that are not anxious.
We have a pile of correlative data
Yeah.
based on self-reported symptoms, level of anxiety, and
Yeah.
lactate, like in the moment, on the day.
And I tested it on myself at the seminar.
Yeah.
I saw it. So there's a relationship between that feeling like it's not even anxiety, it's that like, you know, that either it's anger, whatever sympathetic reaction you have, the one that tingles inside when you feel like shit, like when you're almost, you feel almost acidic, if that's a thing, that I was relating to the amount of lactate. So that lactate has to be flushed, right? Has to be recycled. The only way you recycle it is gluconeogenesis. But what if you turn it off all the time? That means the recycling of lactate will not happen. So that means lactate hangs around. So is it possible that there is a relationship between gluconeogenesis and anxiety?
It would have to be.
It would have to be.
Because, well, one of the things you mentioned is it's lactate in the blood.
Right.
This issue. It's not just lactate. It's not lactate in general, right?
It's not lactate in the brain.
It's not supposed to be in your blood. And that's not supposed to, but in excess in the blood is usually an indicator that there's something wrong. It's supposed to be somewhere, being used, doing something.
Right.
And the energy that you put into stress, just stress in that case,
humongous.
argument, stress, anger, whatever that is costly. And then there is a buildup of lactate because you're not moving.
Right,
so it just
because
is going
you're
to pool
supposed
up
to
in
do
the blood.
something about it, right?
Yeah.
So what is interesting also is to block gluconeogenesis is insulin. Insulin is an inhibitor of gluconeogenesis. So you have carbs, insulin goes up, gluconeogenesis is blocked.
Yeah.
So imagine if he were, if he were the insulin levels block the gluconeogenesis wherever reduced. That means he would block it in the brain as well. So that means you have the lactate in the brain not being recycled. And if you remember, I talked about that a long time ago. There was a study that is on the StrongFit library that was showing that the raise of lactate in the brain was related to anxiety, and they were showing maybe it's because of acidity or things like that. So again, that would mean that there's a relationship between anxiety and gluconeogenesis, even at the brain level.
Yeah.
And that would be stopped by having a raise in insulin level, which will be brought forward by having carbs. So if I look at the Brooks cycle or the Pinot cycle, you guys will choose, that would tell me that gluconeogenesis is one of the most important things. So that means that maybe that's why fasting feels so good on a regular basis, because gluconeogenesis goes up, recycling is being done. So maybe shit that are floating around that shouldn't be floating around are being turned into glucose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that fundamentally fasting, I think, is more like the way we're designed to live anyways. Primary. Not fasting for days, weeks, but fasting for chunks of hours. You shouldn't have to eat every 4 hours. You shouldn't have to eat every 2. You should be able to go 8 hours without eating. And without being a bitch about it, too, to be honest with you.
Right.
And don't get me wrong. I was that guy. I was definitely that guy. And not doing the huge carb swings all the time and not having carbs like all day has changed that dramatically.
But you will have to, because to go back on the nervous system side, like when you have carbs like that, it feeds the sympathetic side, and the sympathetic side, once you're there, wants to be fed.
Well, and it's inefficient.
Right, so it requires more and more and more.
And I can speak on this from having eaten tons and tons of carbs. When you're peaking your carbs at the time, like you'll retain water, high sympathetic response, and all those things are going to lead to and feel a lot like fucking anxiety anyways. So you're going to be in this space with an excess of lactate. You're going to have a pile of energy, high octane, inefficient energy. What the fuck are you doing with it?
Yeah, and we know
and
it
so
ruins the water.
So then you have to train hard and often, and you see that loop people get stuck in where they got to carb more train,
or you crash.
Yeah. Well,
because you can't.
Crash,
because you can't be in sympathetic constantly.
Yeah.
So you could see. So there's obviously a relationship between the sympathetic and the lactate, because they both, like, the body is really designed into either expenditure of energy or conservation of energy. That's really how this works, and that's what you see the lactate to be. It's the main fuel for the body.
Yeah.
So that means that the sympathetic, the lactate, anxiety, all that stuff are linked together. And so carbs do more, they trigger the sympathetic, they make you just produce the lactate right away. So you could see how all those three are so combined together. And so I think it's another view to look at the protocol on the nutrition and behavior aspect, but that basically gives you another avenue to see why the protocol works.
Yeah.
And I think the fact of getting people just fat all day long, so the insulin, like no carbs outside of training, which means the insulin stays low constantly, because if you train really hard, the insulin doesn't go up even if you have carbs actually. Yeah. So you could see that we keep the insulin levels very low all day long, promoting the gluconeogenesis whenever is necessary, maybe with some fasting in between and stuff like that. We get to recycle. I see that as a cleaning system of the body. All the stuff that floats around that wasn't used or whatever is being repurposed into glucose to restart the cycle. That would make so much sense on so many levels. Yeah. Right, and it is not looked at it like that. Gluconeogenesis is being referred to that very expensive stuff that makes glucose out of protein. It's like, no, that's not what this is. It's a recycling, and lactate and pyruvate as the first one.
And help me out with that. Maybe this is my understanding. Is the making glucose out of protein aspect of that that is the talk? That is inefficient, correct?
No, but it's not what happens.
It
would be extremely inefficient.
But that process is, my understanding is calorically, for simply energy use. It's not protein happening. Is of very little use to you when it comes to energy.
That's not what it's for. Recovery. That's not what it's for. It is not what it's for. No, it's not what it's for. Like you can't make, technically you can, but it takes 7 or 8 steps, I think, just to get to the glucose part. It's a horrible way of doing it. Yeah. But you have the glycerol, you have the lactate, you have there's a number of other things to do this. Yeah. And walking around at so movement that is not at a very high level, right, could be requiring fats so you're under 65% of your VO2 max, more or less. That's when you break down fat for energy, because that way you don't have to overly use the lactate that you can use for the brain. So you could see that you could have a repartition of stuff like that work really well. So you're on your bike, you're moving, you're walking, you're doing stuff all day. Yeah. You could learn to basically use lipolysis that works very well with gluconeogenesis, because then you break down the fat, glycerol turns it into glucose, and you're ready to go whenever you need.
Well, it sounds more to me like making your day work for you anyways. Than what I remember my training and big eating and big carb eating days were, which was I was a slave to my day.
Right. Yeah. But by the way, on top, you start to be a slave to macros and to things like it. But if you look at I'm describing the experience of a lot of people that are on high-fat diets and everything. And this is not about promoting the keto diet, because I don't tell people to have protein during the day. So it's not a keto diet. The keto diet is to produce ketones that feed the brain. I don't want ketones to feed the brain. They can, but that's a backup system. I want lactate to feed the brain. But there is a way to do it through the simple, like the Brooks cycle. Yeah. So we can make it work anyway. And then so the hard training session still allow you to get the glycolysis going and everything. All you need is to have enough glucose. And if you have enough fats and the gluconeogenesis was trained enough that it's efficient, then you have plenty of energy.
That's a good point. These processes can be, what's the word, detrained? Yeah. Right?
It can be inefficient, can be
lower efficient.
I've seen that, because I've seen these people don't have the correct ratio, carbs to fats. The protocol doesn't seem to work nearly as much. I had a bunch of women telling me, like at the end, they were having 150 grams of carbs and probably 100 grams of fat a day. So that's 150 grams. That's 600 calories versus 900. Or even if it's 600 versus 1200, it's a 1:2 ratio. Whereas in what I do, I have a 1:10 ratio. Yeah. I have 1 calorie of carb for 10 calories of fat. So I think for the protocol to really work, you need to have a ratio. I had that with a client, hygienist, that was telling me like the protocol right now is working really, really well. But the first 2 weeks, she was putting too much carbs, carbs during training, but she was not having enough fats outside of that. So the ratio wasn't right. So it's like, I don't feel too good. So I really reduced the carbs only for training, and then I upped the fats a lot. And now she says, if she has movement the protocol plus movement, like so lipolysis in her case, like steady cardio, she feels when she has a lot of carbs.
Yeah.
So
minus the stress, the
Exactly.
water, the anxiety, all the bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Minus half a cycle. Right. So I think the carbs, in that sense, during the day, it's a trick. It's a trick. Like, so the whole, like, do steady cardio for 2 hours to break down the fats. Technically, yeah, that's true. You can do that.
But you kind of have to do it that way if that's
Right.
if you're eating a shit ton of carbs. That's kind of the only way you're going to get that done.
Right. And on top of it, like, where is the glycerol going? Like, you're breaking down the fats, but it's into glycerol. Where is that going? Like, there's an entire part of the whole thing. Like, there is no way that this is the main energy cycle for all animals. Like, there is no way evolution figured that one out as a cycle, and we can just cut half of the cycle and think it's fine. There is no fucking way. Evolution doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You can't cut half a cycle. Like the entire recycling is. I bet you will find out that that's not all he recycles. That he recycles a number of other stuff that we just don't understand now, that are either harmful in the body or, trigger the nervous system a specific way or stuff like that. And again, leaving the lactate in the blood and anxiety, like that's a given. Because we tested it time and time again with my daughter at the seminar. When you get stressed, high lactate in the blood.
Yeah.
But the threshold is about 4. When you train like crazy, you're at 20. Right. I'm at 1.
Yeah.
Because my system works really well. I was at 3. I tripled my levels just because of 2 minutes of stress. Not even a real fight, just like, oh, you annoy me.
Yeah.
I was really annoyed. But so we could test at rest, I bet you, and know exactly how anxious we are just by the amount of lactate. And so how do I get that lactate out? I could do steady Disney December. And so that's why Disney December works so well on anxiety. Right. You know what I mean? Right.
Because that's
steady cardio.
Yeah.
That's a type 1 that absorbs the lactate. But that's still a trick. That's why you can't separate the training from the protocol.
Yeah.
Because you're still trying to mask a problem. Oh, by the way, you might have so much anxiety constantly from other reasons than food that you need to do Disney December constantly. Yes, that's true. But if more and more, I'm thinking there's a relationship direct between gluconeogenesis and anxiety. Like if your gluconeogenesis is being enhanced, you can lower your everyday anxiety through that, not just through Disney December. You still have to do it for other reasons than the steady cardio, but an enhanced gluconeogenesis would lower your anxiety, or because you'd be less impacted by it. So fasting would help with anxiety, for example. A lot of people say that.
Yeah.
Like they feel so much sharper mentally. Like, you know what I mean?
I think when we talk about the specific symptoms of anxiety, a lot of them are
too.
based around just not movement as in movement, but as in movement in state, like shifting toward like the idea of anxiety about symptoms of anxiety, anxiety about social. Like a lot of those things, and once things just start migrating that way, anxiety starts to snowball. And I think when you get on these nutritional roller coasters, if you will, whether it's the sugar roller coaster or protein during the day, the nervous system ups and downs.
Insulin goes up and down.
Those ups and downs are a state change that's uncomfortable, I think. You know the feeling. You know that feeling. You can get warmed up at the gym. You start getting warmed up. The whole point is when you do your warm up at the gym is that you go from I'm kind of okay to being here to like, oh fuck. You know what I mean? There is a point in there where your warm up is like fucking harder than you expected it to be, and that's kind of how you know it's work. It's kind of how you know you got it right.
It's like, all right,
you're like motherfucker.
Okay, let me get there.
Fuck. And you're like, all right,
okay, we're in the gym.
But there is times in that where you're like, god damn, where it's frustrating. Anxiety would be the term. You see it a lot before a CrossFit gym or a CrossFit workout before
the open.
You see that a lot. You see people just panicking.
Like if you were to test their lactate levels, I bet you, by the way, there's a problem with that performance-wise, is the threshold, like the amount of lactate that you can have to keep using, to keep oxidize as it goes up, because otherwise eventually it leads to issues, is about over 4. So if you're anxious enough, when we tested Yaya, she was at 4.5. So she was already past the threshold, which means she was already producing more lactate that she could oxidize.
Yeah, which is essentially fight bordering on flight, right, if you will.
That's exactly. I think it's a flight mode. I think imagine how fascinating that would be if the lactate level in the blood is an indication where you are on fight to flight.
Well,
because I was getting really pissed at her.
What we've been seeing, right? As far as out of the endurance people, when we see that curve shows directly.
Yeah. She was. You could tell from her face she was in flight already. Yeah. Right. So maybe that threshold is a fight to flight. Mm-hmm. So you could know just by doing this exactly where you are.
Yeah.
So that would tell you have to, before you train, you have to back off, do a little bit of steady cardio just to flush the stuff and
Yeah, just to be, or to even train effectively. I mean,
exactly.
You know, right. So knowing this, so this is as we've seen. Wim can explain it better than I. But that curve, if you will, if you're a runner, your lactate's going to stay nice and low. It's going to be this slow, gradual uptick, and then all of a sudden, it's going to take this big jump. And somewhere around 4 is where it becomes this kind of unsustainable mess, where then it starts to really accumulate in the blood, and the levels get too high. You're not re-uptaking it or however much using it as fuel, and so then you just have this fucking log jam of lactate, if you will.
I remember Jackie was doing a mile run before any session. I remember she was saying that as a warm-up.
That makes sense.
Right. And so if you're anxious, doing just a 1K run would allow you to lower your lactate levels.
Well, we saw this with some of the testing we were doing this weekend, right? Yep. We would send some people out on a 400-meter sandbag carry.
Very stressed out.
Very stressed out about it. Some people were okay with them, some didn't like them.
Yep.
And the ones who weren't too fond of them, you come back and with the pop.
And they were 15,
way
20.
high, like
15,
way high.
20.
And so there's, but then they go out immediately after that. So they're continuing to exert, but they go out, no sandbag and 400-meter run, which is going to be more on the side.
There's a lot of nasal breathing.
So
but still 400 meter fast, so not easy.
But you're kind of forcing the state with the nasal breathing dictating the pace. You're forcing that state back down towards flow, kind of, if you will. And sure as shit, come back lower. Having done another whatever amount of work.
But they were, instead of 15, 20, they were at 7.
Yeah.
7, 6, under 10.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy difference. Yeah. They were about to oxidize. Right, so you can see the sympathetic oxidation of lactate, all that stuff is linked. And so I think that cycle is the most important thing. Again, this is the fuel for the brain.
Yeah.
So imagine stopping the recycling of all that stuff in the brain. Oh, that can't be good.
Yeah.
Because even the astrocytes create gluconeogenesis to get the extra lactate and whatever is there into not fatty acids, but the extra lactate, the pyruvate, in order to turn back into glucose to get the brain functioning well. So that means that maybe that's why fasting works so well for the brain, like you feel so sharp. So that means that favoring gluconeogenesis would be one of the most important things you can do for the brain as well as the body.
Yeah.
And maybe that explains fasting, that explains no carbs, that explains that way better.
Well, I want to talk about this state change in relative to, say, sport performance or something in competitive sport. That seems to be the key, in my opinion, to whatever the mental game is. What is your fucking mental game? Well, if you are stressed, you could what? Be less stressed? Just be less stressed about it?
Or at least dealing with it better.
Or you're going to understand that you have the stress. You may have self-created the accumulation of some lactate. For whatever reason. And then you know that there might need to be some movement, some things like some nasal breathing, some sort of... But you have to move. You can't just think about fucking relaxing, because that's not how it works.
Yeah, telling people just relax.
How it works.
It shows that it's not how this works.
And there are people that are able to perform better at higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of intensity, or at the very least can maintain flow at a higher state of pressure, if you will, right?
But that's because they control.
Exactly. And so I was watching a thing the other day. It was a basketball thing, but Kevin Garnett was just this nasty motherfucker who used to play for the Timberwolves. Talked the most shit, played the most aggressively, was just a fucking monster. Total prick out on the court. Nobody liked playing against him. It was just, he was one of the best trash talkers ever. But he would do this where he would go out and he would play against you, and it would be, he would push aggression, he would push trash talk, he would be in your face, he'd put physically constantly starting a fight because he can play fucking mad.
Yeah.
Or is
he's
not all
mad.
real mad to him. That's what he's doing to you.
Yeah, it's a game.
But what it's going to be is you cannot just be subjected to that unrelentingly and not have it take a toll. And nobody can play mad as well as he can. So he will just drag you into deep water and fucking drown you with it.
And what he shows you is that when he does that, the first thing he takes away is your cardio.
Yeah.
And so now fourth quarter, because your lactate level just shot.
Well, we've talked about that state thing before, devoid of lactate, a year and a half ago, about the importance of that, why people always talk about getting into game shape is very different, or same thing with wrestling.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was not because the game was any different. The fact, I will tell you this 100%, that I never had a football game that was actually, if you looked at the work I did, should have been physically more taxing than any of the practices we did. The practices we did were meant to fucking kill us. It was 3 times a day, heat of summer, it is intense, heavy, awful, just really nasty shit. Most of it was made illegal, I think 2 or 3 years after I graduated high school, for head trauma, heat stroke, all the reasons you shouldn't be subjecting teenage kids to that type of shit. But what happened is the first game of the year, by 2-3 plays in, from between whistles, you're fucking, oh my God, you have no idea what happened, but what it is there's a crowd. There's whistles.
Exactly.
There's pressure. This team hates you. He's not on your team.
Yeah, exactly.
That guy punched me in the fucking kidney on the second play, and the kid, some 14-year-old I've been lighting up in practice all month, never fucking did that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's all these little variables that
just happened.
That is just a elevated state, something I cannot maintain flow in. And when we see the lactate curve and where that fits into your ability to sustain output,
so that means
it would drive me up here, and I'm inefficient.
Right, exactly.
I can't fucking maintain. My cardio's gone, totally gone, and I can't recover between plays either, because it's like, what is happening? It's all this uncertainty. Same thing with basketball. Both of those, and with wrestling, frankly. Wrestling practice is the hardest thing I've ever participated in. And I didn't participate in that beyond age 15, 16.
Yeah,
wrestling
you're getting bent.
And wrestling, we had some serious psychopath coaches. Shit that I didn't know humans could survive that type of training. It was unreal. But go to that first match. You're on the mat with, what 3 rounds, if you get pinned in 2 minutes, it still is the hardest fucking 2 minutes of anything you've ever
violated.
Yeah.
But so that would mean that better performance in that case for power sports would be what? Would be capacity to process lactate. That means more mitochondria. Yeah. So that means more cardiovascular capacity done at steady pace, to absorb the lactate.
Specifically, so that in between your massive exertions,
you get to
have
clear
the
fast.
ability to clear
fast.
and you have to know how to.
So that means cardiovascular is actually important even for heavyweights, even for strongmen and everything. Yeah. And then the gluconeogenesis, the protocol, is that important because you know how to recycle fast. Or you won't be able to recycle like in that training session, but after, one day to the next, all that stuff, that it will become that good. And again, if you don't do the recycling, that means all that stuff is floating around. I bet you that affects performance. It has to. We'll test it eventually, but how could it not?
Yeah.
So I thought that idea that it's a cycle is a massive idea in that sense.
Yeah.
I think gluconeogenesis is almost a no name.
Yeah.
Like it's just that thing over there where I think it's a major part of the whole equation. And if I look at me, I did the protocol not based on that. I did it based on the circadian rhythms and the nervous system. But it happens to fit exactly the energy and the Brooks cycle as well.
Yeah.
So I thought that's something that came to me during the seminar as I was writing it. I was like, so it's a cycle. How interesting. So I think that fits the protocol. It fits all that, even from an energy system perspective. So the protocol is right.
Yeah.
Well, but for performance, yeah. So imagine the number of tests we can do now with lactate in the blood. We have the stuff at the gym.
Oh, that's right.
Oh yeah, we're going to start playing with that stuff.
He's going to kill me.
Give me your finger. Because we'll see, even between sets, like of the sled, we take it, we'll be at 20 plus, but all right, nasal breathing for 2 minutes. Let's see, let's get efficient at clearing the lactate. So we can try nasal breathing, mental visualization, we can try all this and we can test it on the lactate levels.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and then that fight or flight at 4, oh man, how interesting would that be? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's even at rest, it would mean something then.
Well, and I can say I speak to that a lot in my training. Is that when I start, I feel that when we've described it in this way, I feel that like, you know, above that curve.
Yeah.
Like
when you start
that's where
when
I
you change
get.
color. Yeah.
But that's where I get. That's just,
Every time.
That's what I.
Yeah, that's what
what
you
I do. There's been times where Julien's had to remind me, and we'll be doing like sled drags where it's supposed to be intense. Supposed to be intense.
Yeah. It's supposed to kill you.
But the issue is there is an issue here where I can do the intensity, but to the point where it's self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
In that what it
you
is
can't be
is
straight,
you're going and you're a fucking mess and it's halfway through and there's half the work to be done yet.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And then go
Right.
and stop and then go.
Yeah, and plus you're not pushing in a straight line.
No,
it's not efficient.
It's just a mess.
Yeah.
So what I've found myself that I do in those times is I'll push intensity for intensity's sake, and at the expense of everything else. And so to be able to pull some of that back in is very interesting, and that takes awareness. That is a skill on its own, but it also does require the energy systems, the pathways, the nutrition to support.
Exactly. Because again, like he shows you that lactate and the sympathetic go hand in hand. So if you let the lactate shut up, then so does the sympathetic. So that means flight mode is coming hard, and flight mode coordination goes away.
Yeah.
So again, being able to control exactly how far the lactate goes up is very important. So.
And when we talk about precision and performance, a sport that requires finesse,
all sports
and explosiveness,
all sports do outside of CrossFit.
Yeah.
Real sport.
But I think. I'm
joking.
Yes, of course.
Strongman doesn't require finesse either.
Not at all. Not at all. But this fucking shot I got.
Yeah,
does.
Exactly. That one.
But I think that's another thing too. Is that
me being so stressed when I was playing
pool
pool in competition.
Yeah.
I bet you, if I had tested, I bet you I was at the threshold.
Yeah.
And so coordination goes out the window. So nasal breathing, all that stuff. So that's something we could train.
Yeah. Well, and it really ties into when we talk about torque, nervous system, nutrition, and all of that into a nice bow. And now we have these tools that we can use to measure. I think that's really interesting with the lactate.
That shows you why having coffee before playing pool in competition was a bad idea.
Yeah,
right. So
sure.
the breakfast would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Not letting my blood pressure go down would be better than up before playing. It'd be better to be on the low side than the high side, because low side is going to trigger gluconeogenesis, which is going to help me clear the lactate.
Yeah.
Right before I start playing.
Yeah. And
stuff like that. So it's a very interesting concept, I think.
Well, and that's why I think at a very high level, when you're talking professional athletes, professional basketball players, baseball, a lot of them, the majority of your really, really, really great ones, your really high, when you talk clutch performers, the ones who last second shots, just your big stars, don't really play with a lot of fire, actually. Not a lot of big emotional fire. They really are the coolest cat walking into the gym.
Well, it's Kobe Bryant.
Exactly.
He'll stab you in the heart and look at you in the eyes when he does it.
Yeah.
He won't. It's. I think it was Reggie. Is it Reggie who said that? He was like, no, he won't stab you in the back. He'll stab you in the front, in the heart, in the front, and look at you and while he twists.
I had just seen something today. I'm gonna share this just because I saw it today and I thought it was awesome. This was a Kobe Bryant thing that I had came across today, and he had said, it was really funny. The quote was, it was basically that the NBA was easier than high school to beat guys in, because he said guys lose their work ethic when they get financial stability. He said in high school, because he came right out of high school in the NBA, he's like, everybody's trying to make a name for themselves. Everybody wants to go. If you're the guy, they want to go against you. And he said, and so Kobe's quote was, he said, I got into the NBA and it's like taking candy from a baby. He said, no wonder Mike wins all these fucking championships. Mike drop, man. That's fucking fantastic. Michael's winning all those championships because all these other chumps just got paid. And there's something to be said for that. But
I've seen it.
Kobe's the type of killer, he'd play with fire. But I'll tell you this, when you would see him hit a 3-point shot and there was 2 seconds left on the clock, he could hit a shot that would be, the whole crowd's going nuts. But if there's any time on that clock, stone cold to the bench for the timeout to get the fucking job done. And then he'll rip the fucking place apart. But there is that's why a lot of those types of athletes, not him at all, but there's a lot of athletes that are very high level athletes that also can't be bothered to care in practice.
Right.
because like, what do you want me to do?
Whatever. Like I know how to play.
Yeah.
But if you look at Kobe, also he trained, like he practiced for hours before the matches.
Total madman.
Right. Yeah, but then you could see that total madman is what? Is the capacity to just go and go and go. So the cardiovascular capacity is
absolute control.
Right. Yeah. But so that means imagine the endurance, not in the sense endurance, like the capacity for work of the guy. That relates to, again, like the clearance and using it as fuel, like all the stuff. I mean,
well, and I think that if your state is over elevated, you have lots of tools to get you there and lots of tools to get you back. It's not one or the other. It's not just your nutrition. It's not just because you're in a mood. It's not just your breathing. It's not just your movement or pain or anything. It really is everything. But I think knowing what those pieces are, you can start to move things around to shift things in the direction that you need. And that's the nature of it. Just knowing all the parts.
Exactly. And I think it's I think it's the Brooks cycle is everything. Is how do I produce lactate and how do I clear it?
Yeah.
That seems to be the main thing, because again, fats and creatine phosphates are usable for energy, but they're not lactate.
Yeah.
Lactate is the shit. So it's all about producing it and clearing it. And so it's that Brooks cycle. Right? That's the secret.
Can we name this one "Lactate is the shit"? Episode
The
105.
lactate is the shit. I like it. I think so. But that puts gluconeogenesis in a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
And so why not carbs all day long? That's my argument.
Yeah. Well, I still like most of those things. Is a lot of people pipe up. You mentioned this during the seminar as well. Well, I can't get much fats in. I can't get this, and what it really comes down to worrying about getting enough fats in. It's really that they just want to have carbs for a lot of people and all that stuff. It's like it's like that's often it, because in most of these cases, it's like, well, just try it.
Right.
Just try the thing.
It's like when the guy said gluconeogenesis is just, you can't get glucose from protein in an efficient way. I was like, you chose the one thing out of the gluconeogenesis that makes your point that carbs are good. Mm-hmm. That's it. So you're not, this isn't a conversation. This is just like a way to deny that you should be doing that. Which I get that all the time. It's just people don't want to give up the carbs. But why? Because it feeds the sympathetic, because for many reasons. And so there's an entire side there that is fascinating. And by the way, I see even that in the studies that I look at. I cannot tell you the number of studies that I'm looking at that point fat as a problem. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not carbs. It's like they have specific mice that they created, modifying the genes and everything. And they were showing that the mice had such a strong gluconeogenesis going that they actually had hyperglycemia. They had an elevated blood sugar from the fats. Basically, they gave them a high-fat diet, and then they modified the genes in a way so they could make the gluconeogenesis that much stronger and a number of things on the side. And the mice ended up with hyperglycemia. So I can tell what's coming out of that one is like fats equals diabetes. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that's actually in the conclusion that they trigger diabetes through fats.
My thing is are we like hasn't everything up to now been like, oh, carbs and sugar, diabetes, excess carbs and sugar?
Yeah. No. Now we're saying it's
excess
fats.
Carbs and sugar are bad for you. But you know what I mean? Like, you can point to all the research for that.
Doesn't matter.
And then that there's dysfunction caused by this. Then I can point to all the research that would say essentially, well, carbs, you should be using them for training, and that's exactly what you should do. And I can point to all the research that will say that fucking high-fat, low-carb is better. I can point to research that keto is, or fucking carnivore is better. I was talking to a coach about this the other day, and it says, anybody can take anything now, and they can just appeal to authority and say, I'll just point to whatever hand-picked studies I have that say this. And you could literally be the carnivore diet coach. You can point to 5 studies that'll validate your wisdom that you have fucking none of. And then you can still build this little narrow system for those people, and it'll work for them until it doesn't, and you'll blame them, and that's it. Or you could then uproot and go the high carb route. You can be the high carb guy, and you can push all the stuff. You got to have the carbs to fuel. You got to have
depending on the fat of the movement.
You can do fucking anything that you want to do, and you can still have the studies to back it up. And
that's where we are.
And that's where when I look at the whole mechanism, and now it's like, if that's the extent of it, was I got this thing and I have this study, then I'm bored with you already.
Yeah.
Because you're doing the same thing everyone else is
doing. And by the way, in the same study, they were showing you that those mice that had triggering diabetes through hyperglycemia were way smaller than the other normal mice.
because of
the fact that they have gluconeogenesis was going,
ramped
and
up.
they were with a sympathetic high, they were just burning fats like crazy because
it was calorically extremely efficient.
Right, because they have a high fat diet, so they had to break down the fats into glycerol and fatty acids to get the glycerol for gluconeogenesis. So having a high gluconeogenesis, an efficient, whatever the fuck it's called, right, was all right. So we need to break down the fats. Yeah. So what he did is he started to break down the fat at a much higher, so it increased lipolysis, which made the mice smaller than the control group.
Yeah, the energy applied to the system.
It's funny, like that was not the main part of the conclusion, because that's the one I saw. I mean, So because it seemed, because they modified them genetically,
of course,
it's hard to tell. But imagine if everything is always a two-way street. That's what I learned. So in neuroscience, all that stuff, it's always a two-way street. Imagine it's having a more efficient gluconeogenesis boosts lipolysis. That means that the more efficient you are at the recycling part, the leaner you'll get.
Yeah.
That would explain why I can have 4,000 calories of fats a day, like right now, train the way I want with just chocolate milk, and still stay as lean as I am while gaining weight. Because right now I'm at 107, I think. I'm getting close to 240.
Do you think it's important to still make sure you hit the carbs then in your training? Some readily available carbs in your training so that you keep that in its place?
Well, okay.
Because you have to have...
Yeah, I think it's important for a very good reason. Is feeding the brain, right? Feeding the lactate to the brain. The brain can produce its own lactate, so the astrocytes, but feeding it extra is good. The only thing is to feed the lactate to the brain, it has to be created in a type 2 fibers, fast oxidative and fast glycolytic. And it's actually being created way more for the brain in the type 2B fibers, the fast glycolytic, the very explosive white muscle. The white muscle feeds lactate to the brain. Why? Because of the MCT4s. So that means that the harder I punch the workout, the heavier I go, the more explosive I am, the greater the fight mode, the more I feed the lactate to the brain. So I've tried to go back down to around 10 reps to try the bodybuilding cycle, like assistance work cycle of the template. And within 8-9 days, first of all, I had to have honey as well when I was training, and that was too much. I started to ache everywhere, but also I couldn't read in the morning anymore. My capacity for focus was much lower. Now that I went back and just do assistance work, phase 2, very heavy, phase 3, so back to my normal template, right away this morning I could read better.
Yeah.
So there is a direct relationship between the sharpness of your brain and how heavy you train. So to train heavier, to hit the sympathetic fully and everything, I do think carbs during training help. Because they promote the sympathetic reaction.
Well, so I did. I've done mostly fasted during my training. I haven't had very many carbs during my training in a while. Really, just out of shopping convenience for me. It's just another errand to run, another shit I got to worry about having. It's also not it's not types of food that I eat.
Just generally. It's chocolate milk.
Yeah. So for me, but then I got to stop and get chocolate milk, and it's usually in my best interest that there not just be a few liters of chocolate milk in the fridge. You know what I mean? So I just hadn't, but I had felt when I had some carbs during training still, as I've reintroduced them now probably once to twice a week or so for the last 2 or 3 weeks, my ability to stay mentally in the training, not even just physically, but mentally in the training, is far better. I almost felt like I was getting these dehydration symptoms where I get this tingling from down the back of my fucking neck, and I get when I'm training fasted first. And so and then I would just I could do the work, but then there's a wall. And there wasn't much turning back from that. And so the difference for me was at that point was, as I started having more carbs, is my ability to carry that intensity throughout the longer duration of a thing, and not fucking be just crushed about it. And then that put that expenditure even higher. That sunk all that down then again, and I'm back under the other side of it again.
It seems it allows you to. There's no question that the carbs during the training allow me to push further. There's a downside to that. It's like when I was having so much honey, I overdid it, and so then I started crashing too and stuff like that. So that because you have to have enough carbs that you're going to use, but not past that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, again, insulin starts to shoot up. Like if you have the carbs at the end and you know, like, so I don't want the insulin to shoot up. Insulin shoots up, it's insulin sensitivity is a problem. It's going to stop the gluconeogenesis, all that stuff. So that means that I have to have my carbs all the way to, let's say, 3/4 of the workout, but then I'm done. And then, because why? Because I have to burn that sugar. So if I had that much honey, especially toward the end, then it would carry over. And now because the training is down, then the insulin, like the fight mode is not blocking the insulin anymore, blah, and then now I'm having issues after and stuff like that. So the more I do this, the more I learn to be precise. But if I have the chocolate milk after my warm-up during the first 3/4 of the main workout, then there's no question I can push harder and do more work. And I'm sharper mentally, so I enjoy it more and I can attack it a lot better. So yeah, there's no question it's working. But it's like right now I'm basing that on the energy system, going, okay, this is what's happening, and it's working really, really well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about where we're at.
Yeah, but I thought that one is the fact that it's a cycle, like within the biology world, it should be obvious. Like it's weird that he has not, I mean, I know why he has not been put forward, but that's another Nobel Prize.
Well, we had a really good seminar this past weekend.
Yep.
And we're doing another one here in August?
End of August. The last weekend of August.
HQ is pretty awesome for having this. It's the most like sandbag and yoke-centric place we've ever even had a seminar anywhere.
And we can be inside, we can be outside. Yeah. Oh, that was fun.
Well, and we were worried too. It was like, oh shit, I wonder if these neighbors are going to be cool with us having people around. And then the gym, there's a functional fitness gym kind of right next to us, behind us. And they got people all out in the parking lot that we've been using too. So I know that nobody gives a fuck. So
or they'll blame them anyway.
Or they'll blame them. So we had a really good group. It was a lot of fun. So August there'll be another one at HQ. Yep. If you want to come.
End of August.
I had a blast taking pictures of everybody. It was my new fun project. It was during the thing. Normally the strategy is take pictures of the seminar so I can use them to promote the seminar. But it was a lot more fun to take pictures of kind of document everyone's experience for them, so then they didn't have to sit there with their phones in there.
Please,
and people could pay attention.
Yep.
And then I gave them all their shit, and so you'll see us sharing around some of their stories. But if you want to catch that seminar, we have one here in August at the now legendary StrongFit HQ in Amsterdam.
I like it. It's the, I think, 27th, 28th. It's the last weekend of August. I think it's 27th, 28th.
It should be up on the...
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It will be by the time you're seeing
it. And then the gym will be even further. I got us dumbbells.
Is there a lat pull down showed up today?
Yeah. Oh, did he show up today?
Well, Richard posted a picture of one.
Yes!
I didn't realize you ordered one.
Yeah, I told you guys.
Yeah, but I did. But you said it was one that you put weights on. This is a plate table.
I know, because, okay, so the stuff with the weights on... Yeah. 6 months from now.
Oh, so that was the one that was going to come on the rig.
Right. And so the guy was like, all right, we can't have that one. Do you want this one? There's a plate and everything. I was like, well, fuck yeah. I'll take that one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
is that more expensive?
But he gave us a $200 discount.
Okay.
So instead of...
Julian's been like, they don't have things. They don't have the right thing that he wants. So his solution is, I'll just give this inept business who has fucking dropped the ball on this inventory thing. I know. Yeah. But like I wasn't trying to drop any names here. But I'll just give these assholes more money to buy the more expensive thing that they do have.
No, the guy, actually, because I was like, where are we? And the guy was very nice. He's like, no, we don't have that. Like, so, but in exchange, this is a 960 and you can get it for 700.
I'll take
the other one was almost 6.
Those are hard to beat. That's top bottom cable too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right, we're set.
And I got us the dumbbells today all the way to 50 kilos.
Jesus Christ. All right.
And with the benches and everything. Not benches, but like the racks for dumbbells. Yeah. It's 13 pairs all the way to 50 kilos.
What we need then...
I can do incline benching. We need a real bench.
Well, we got about 5 more of those spotlights. Because by the way, when I was going through those pictures, you know those little spotlights we have? That's legit like studio photo stuff. It looks fucking fantastic.
We need more of them.
So we need those, but we need a big run of mirrors where the dumbbells are. For sure. Just a big run.
We need at least one of them with mirrors. There's no question.
For sure. So anyway, seminars you're going to find at strongfit.com/seminars. Strongfit.com, strongfitequipment.com for sandbags, apparel, all the good stuff. At strongfit.com, and they're the StrongFit classroom, you're going to find Julien's one-on-one training, the functional integration training template, and the 6-week coaches course. We were supposed to have Richard on this week, but coaches week was in
Coaches week,
I
He's coming next week.
So next week we'll have Richard on. We're going to talk about that anxiety course that he's been running through.
And after the
workshop.
anxiety course, before we start another one, you know what I would like to do? Maybe is assistance work or bodybuilding course.
Yeah.
6 weeks, or 8 weeks, so we can alternate between the two. So it doesn't
That's
do
not a
back to
bad
back to
idea.
back.
Yeah.
And so because also he's giving them a lot of homework to do.
And
I
some
think
people might be able to carry over from this into the other
Right.
because they need more of that work
and
to build on.
like almost like how to make the template to workshop.
Yeah.
The 6 weeks is like, look, when we say find, like pull downs, no, find the lats.
Yeah.
Like we can't say, it's not about squatting, it's about doing an exercise that
doing the
engages
work,
your hammies and your
doing the work,
glutes.
yeah.
So we can't say, do an exercise that engages the hammies and the glutes. So we'll say, do the deadlift, but it's not about deadlifting, it's about finding specific muscles.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be a good idea to have a 6-week course like that, just like the anxiety, 6 to 8 weeks, where we can use the template, give them a template and say, okay, but this is how you're going to find the quads, the VMO, the stuff. I think he'd be very good at that.
Yeah, definitely.
And he's trying to look the
And that's-
part right
that's
now.
his
So he's
wheelhouse.
just trying it like,
Richard's getting like extra swole. He's got that.
exactly.
He's getting that summer
he's
jack.
benching every day.
How's it? It's got to be some sort of.
I was
almost
watching him
every
bench
day.
today again.
I saw him bench today.
Yeah.
He benched with me on Saturday at lunch and fucking about put me into the ground. Shit.
Like, he's getting
I
excited.
I was crushed. Not too bad Sunday.
Don't worry, he told that to everybody too.
Oh, motherfucker. Whatever,
Yes.
whatever. I got a broken hand here. And but then Sunday I trained as well. And then these last 2 days, it was all just upper back.
Yeah.
Did some Zercher yoke stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah,
some
oh, yeah,
sandbag
that would-
cleans.
that will
So
let you
my
get
shit, my fucking obliques, biceps, and then everything from my brain stem to my fucking scapula is just.
That's
been
when you know
fucked.
That's when you know you've done good work.
So
Yeah.
so I was sitting today at this coffee spot trying to work, and I have my this little computer here, which is small, and I have this little computer and this little mouse, and it's at this short thing. So I felt like Mr. Incredible in his car, you know. So that's just, and I was so stiff that there was no way to have good posture to be down here. So I just worked like this, like.
So your upper back is like.
So I get it. That's why I get here and I'm.
Yeah.
So, that's probably the long and short of all the pitches we got to give to today, I think. You know where to find us, strongfit.com, at strongfit1 on Instagram, at Tyler Effenstone. Richard is at Rare Barracuda, and we will see you in a couple days.